Okay, we are going to start adding and subtracting integers. And integers can also be added and subtracted using an algorithm or a set of rules. So you don't really need to know this word, but algorithm. So last time we used that number line. Sometimes, like in 6th grade, you might have used little chips and stuff. And that's fine if you still need to draw pictures or use that. But eventually you just need to know the set of rules. So if the two numbers have the same sign, then add and use the same sign. So obviously this one we're used to. Like if they're both positive, we know it ends up positive. And if they're both negative, so a -6 plus a -5, and that parentheses, you don't have to have that there. They just do that so you notice the negative sign. Equals -11. I like to describe this as if we have a bunch of negative people in the room plus a bunch more negative people come in the room, then we're going to have a bunch of negative people in the room. Okay, if the signs are different, I'm just going to write diff, then you actually subtract and take the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. So, or you can say you just take the sign of the bigger number. So right here, you might want to write, because some people get confused at what that means. So bigger number. So for example, we have a 6 plus a -5. Those are different signs. So we actually subtract and do 6 minus 5. And we get a 1. And then since 6 is the bigger number, it stays positive. Okay. Over here, we have a -6 and a 5. So they're different signs. So we subtract their absolute values, which is 1. And then we pull in the negative sign since 6 is a bigger number. So you can still look at a number line, but you really need to start learning those rules. It's kind of something you have to memorize. I also like to think of it as if you're thinking of what'd I do? If you're thinking of it as, let me find my space. Okay. If you have 3 plus -4. So if you kind of think of it like a battle between good and bad. So if you have 3 good people and then you have 4 negative people and they're like fighting, then each one is going to fight each other. So these two are going to fight and like kill each other. And then this one's going to fight that one and they both die. And then this one's going to fight that one and they both die. And then there's one negative left over. So that's where you get the sign of the bigger number. Okay, so practice adding these. I will do a few and then I'll kind of have you do some. So -6 plus plus 6, -9 plus 6. So they're opposite signs. So we do 9 minus 6, which is 3. And then we take the sign of the bigger number. Okay, over here we have -6 and a -8. So the signs are the same. So we actually add them. So we have 6 plus 8 and we get 14. And since all of those would be negative, they all stay negative. Negative people plus negative people equal all negative. Okay, 7 plus 4 here is obviously 11. We know that. I'll do the easy ones. 9 plus 3 is 12. Let's see here. Let's do this one here together. So -7 plus 12. We have 12 minus 7, and that is 5. And then we take the sign of the bigger number, so it's going to be positive. And we don't need to put the plus sign there. So you go ahead and try those and really try to do it without looking at the number line. But if you have to still, that's fine. and go ahead and pause it and do those. Okay, so if you need to pause it to look at my answers, go for it. I really don't remember now which ones I hadn't done. Let's see here. So this in column B, this 2 plus negative 6, I subtracted because the signs are different, and I took the sign of the bigger number. And then right next to that, I subtracted and got 6, and then I took the sign of the bigger number. Negative 10 plus negative 5, signs are the same, so we add them and keep the sign. And the sum is just when you add the column, and you can check it out to see if that's what you get. These numbers here should add up to this. So that's good practice doing more than one. So like here, you could put together 11 plus 5 is 16, and then you take away the 3. Here, I would add the 4 and 9 is 13. And then you have negative 8 and negative 4, which is negative 12. And then you get 1. So go ahead and practice those also, because it's good practice to do more than 2 numbers. Okay. So when a number on the backside, when a number and its opposite, which you already did this up here, and you got 0, are added, the sum is 0. They cancel each other out. So it's similar to when you have those little counters or those little chips, like I did up here with that little battle. Those opposites canceled each other out. And so we are going to stop right there for this lesson. Okay, so we're going to continue now, and you're going to skip over to handout 4 because we're going to stick with adding. So it says jot down the process for adding fractions and decimals. So remember, decimals, the most important thing is you line up the decimal, whether it's positive or negative, and you can add zeros. Okay, for fractions, we make sure we have common denominators. I'm just going to put common D. Okay, so you follow the same rules with these rational numbers. And remember, rational just means it includes fractions and decimals. So the same steps apply as what we just did. So if the signs are the same, you add and keep the sign. And if the signs are different, we subtract and take the sign of the bigger number, or with the greatest absolute value. So you can practice doing these up here because these should be similar to what we were just doing. And so should these. So I'm going to pause, and then you put your answers in. Okay, so go ahead, and if you need to pause it to look at the answers slower, go ahead. Up here, the signs are the same, so we added and kept the sign. Down here, the signs were different, so we subtract. And remember to always put the bigger number on top. You know, like here you would put 17 minus 8. That's going to be really important when we have decimals and fractions. And then take the sign of the bigger number. Okay, if the signs are the same, again, with decimals, we add and keep the sign. So decimals should still be pretty easy. You just have to make sure that you put the larger number on top when you go to subtract. And on these, they didn't try to trick you. So like on this one here, they have the larger number. Well, I guess you're not subtracting on any of those, my bad. So these you're going to add and keep the sign. Okay, so you're going to do those and check them in a little bit. If the signs are different, again, we subtract. So I'm just going to write the subtraction sign. So this is where it's really important. For example, on the very first one, you need to put, you're going to subtract because the signs are different, but we need to put the 10.7 on top or we're going to get messed up. So you're going to subtract, and we get 2 here, and then we're going to borrow, and that becomes a 9, and we get 7.2. Whoa. We're not borrowing. That was goofy. We're getting 8.2, my bad. And then the sign of the bigger number is positive, so it stays positive. Okay, so here again, you need to make sure you put 17.6 on top. So you go ahead and do those. And make sure you pause the video while you're doing them. Okay, so you can check your answers up here. Pause it if you need to. This is a 10 right there. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and do, let's see here. I will do let's see, I'll do this one, next one. So we need to put, well, I'll do this one. So we're going to do 9.0 minus 7.4 because the signs are different. I'm going to borrow, and so I have 1.6, and sign of the bigger number is 9, so that stays the same. You go ahead and pause it and do the other three. Okay, there's your answers. Make sure that you're looking to make sure you have the negative sign when you need to have it. Okay, this second to last is a negative 8.5, and this one's negative. So then we go on to fractions. So the process for fractions is just the same. So if the signs are the same, we add and keep the sign. And they were nice to here and kept all common denominators the same. So you go ahead and do those. And then if the signs are different, we subtract. That's subtracting. And take the sign of the bigger number. So again, it's a little bit easier when the denominators are the same. The thing is you have to make sure that when you're subtracting that you put the bigger number on top or it gets confusing. So go ahead and pause it. Okay, so I'm going to show you those answers. Again, make sure you look for the negative. A negative fraction plus a negative is still all negative. And then if the signs are different, we're going to subtract. So we need to put the bigger number on top when we go to subtract. So on the first one, 1 1/3 is bigger than 2/3. So now we have to either borrow or change that into 4/3. And if you do that, it makes it a lot easier. So if we turn this into 4/3, then we subtract and get 2/3, and the sign of the bigger number is positive. Okay, next one, 7/8, we're subtracting because the signs are different, so we could really just do this right across. It ends up being 2/8, which is 1/4. Okay, next one, you need to make sure you do 7 minus 5. And so that ends up being 2/12, which equals 1/6. Next one, we do 4/9. Oh, and I need to scoot back to that one because, see, I even forgot. Sign of the bigger number. And this one, sign of the bigger number. Next one, we're going to do 1 3/10. I'm going to change that into 1 times 10 plus 3 is 13 over 10. And I'm going to minus 7/10 from that. And I get 6/10, which equals, and we're going to divide each by 2. So it equals 3/5. Okay. So the harder ones are the ones where you have to find the common denominator, and then you got to figure out if you're adding or subtracting. So let's do this first one together. It says, and then follow the steps for adding. Yeah, so find the common denominator, then follow the steps for adding fractions with like denominators. Okay, so on this one, I'm going to use 6. So I'm going to turn this one into 4/6, times them by 2. And then I see the signs are different. So I am going to subtract. So 4 minus 1 is 3, 6, which equals 1/2. And I got to look at the sign. The bigger number was positive, so it stays positive. So you go ahead and try the next 3 and pause it. Okay, so if you need to pause it again to look at the answers longer, I tried to show the work that I did here on this one. I made it out of 8 times by 2. This one, I turned this into 1 2/3 into 5/3. And then I set them equal out of 12. So then I subtracted and got 17. And then I changed it into this. And it's negative because it's the sign of the bigger number. This one, the last one, I turned them both out of 10 and then subtracted and took the sign of the bigger number. Okay, I know that was a lot, but that is all of adding with any kind of number that could be positive or negative mixed together in any form, decimals, fractions, anything.